Well, I
screen
take them and
things.
they make me feel.
Bring it on. I'm too into it. I've fought two of those COVIDs off. I'm good.
I knew that was a slow pitch,
You can bring it
Commissioner
on.
Left
Joby.
yourself.
Let me know if you can take this, I'm gonna move over.
My son's got three of them, so I'm good to go. I get fat.
I'm calling this meeting to order of the Community Redevelopment Agency, the 24th of March, 2025. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Chair Rich,
Here?
Vice Chair Collins.
Here.
Board Member Clark,
Here.
Board Member Giobi,
Here.
Board Member Reed, Board Member Breckville,
Here.
Board Member James.
Here,
We do not have an invocation, so please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
You guys need to learn the song.
He's 71, he came in.
Okay, I get a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Commissioner Clark. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any comments or questions by the commissioners? None. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any comments from the public? Do we have any public? Mr. Shear, you in fact count as public. Do we have any comments from the public on non-agenda items? Negative. Seeing none. Comments by board members. Commissioner Giobi, do you have any comments?
No, I do not, thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
It was just amazing to read the annual
I'm
report.
sorry,
of-
board member Clark.
sorry. It was amazing to read the annual report, and I'm looking forward to the presentation by Ms. Pinkston.
Board member James.
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Board member Breckville.
Just one general comment for this board to think about. With the changes that we're making in the city, okay? Right now, I think that the CRA is going to need a little guidance relative to what types of things that we should approach and what types of things that we should get involved with, and how that relationship or that symbiotic relationship between the CRA and the city can work so that we maximize the revenue that's coming out of the CRA. Our goal in that CRA is to produce really as much revenue as possible in that CRA because it's tax dollars that we get to keep versus tax dollars that go elsewhere. And so, but we have to figure out how we're going to do that, so that we can maximize that value. And I think right now, I'm just mentioning that I think that there's a need to kind of explore, has that focus changed at the CRA level? Should we change at the CRA level? And if so, what is that vision? And I'm kind of talking about like we did 40 years ago or whatever it was, 45 years ago when we first looked at the vision for downtown. I think it might be a good idea to relook at that just to see what the situation is. Anyway, that's just a comment I have.
Have you made that suggestion to the, I would think those specific
CRB.
suggestions would come from the CRB board.
CRB.
Well, the CRB, we've looked at that. We were just asked, what kind of money we thought should be allocated to what. And it was kind of in that process that it came to my attention. I personally kind of thought about, well, you know what? I'm not really sure, because I'm not sure that we should go down, this alley per se, and or that the CRA should. Maybe their direction should be different at this point. And, that's the CRA ultimately, although it's an independent board, it needs to take its direction from the city commission and from the people. So I'm just wondering if it's not time to it's been a long time. Maybe we should rethink all of that and see what we want to do.
Board member Collins?
So at one of our recent meetings, Pinal had asked a similar question. She was trying to get some feedback from us, and my comments were that I would like to see us moving away from these large-scale projects where we're investing all of the capital that's available, like the undergrounding or a bright line, and starting to move in the direction of picking different areas and just making it nicer. When you pump all of that money into one thing, it's sort of at the expense of the rest of the city. So when downtown gets $10 million out of the CRA budget, what about all the other parts of the city? So, more in the direction of, instead of changing the infrastructure, just make sure that the roads are paved. The sidewalks are nice. If we want to do some streetscaping beautification, but this sort of thing that we've been doing where it's large-scale projects and even streetscaping to the point of creating complete streets where it's like totally changing the street, I think is overkill, and I would rather see, and I think the average resident would rather see that, there's no potholes, the roads are paved, the sidewalks are functional.
Well,
It's nice, but it's not.
And I,
And to your point, it's antagonistic somewhat to your point, which is, what do we do for greatest revenue? And greatest revenue might be some of these larger projects, but,
well, it's not even that, Chris, as much. You're getting to what I'm getting at,
Right.
is that, if we put a little thought into it, there are ways, without getting into legal issues or in trouble or anything else, there are ways that we can structure some of the improvements so that we can spend that CRA money. We have to, and that's producing, Pinole was, I think it was a 45% return. If we can produce that, and that keeps us, and that allows us as a city to not have to spend any general funds at all in the CRA, then we can then spend that money out in the city. We can't spend CRA money out in the city. The example I use is, it's a kind of a dumb example, but I'll just use it. If we replaced a garbage truck in downtown Stewart, all right, and we paid $500,000 for a garbage truck, we can do that out of CRA money if that garbage truck was in the CRA. Now, that frees up a garbage truck that goes somewhere else, right? So what I'm saying is, if we can think about this a little bit in terms of what that symbiotic relationship should be, so that we do spend the money in the CRA that makes us the most money to be able to reduce the taxes, or at least keep them low for those people who live in the city but
this
not in the
is an
CRA.
accountant move.
I know,
This
it is.
Borderline tax evasion for the
It's not
CRA.
tax evasion, it's
I love it.
perfectly
Yeah,
legitimate,
no,
but
it's,
it's
beautiful.
perfectly
Yeah.
legitimate. That's all I'm saying.
It's good. It's good.
Board Member Collins, are you done? I'm sorry.
I'm done.
We were just drawing.
I would just say, Board Member Breckbill, don't sell yourself short. The purpose of the CRA is to attract private investment, encourage economic growth, and enhance the quality of life within the Seward CRA. It is not, never to me has it been explicitly to maximize the revenue. That sounds a little odd to me. You have some very qualified people on your board, and I would very much value your suggestions or recommendations along the lines that you've just suggested. That doesn't mean, of course, that we're not bound to take them, but I would hope you would take the time and seek input from your members and the public and make some, very sensible suggestions to us that we can consider, so. Okay, action item. We have the presentation of the Community Redevelopment Agency Annual Report 2024. Jordan, you are the staff doing this this evening?
Yes, Panal is in India, so I will be doing the presentation today. Good afternoon, CRA board members. I'm Jordan Pinkston, CRA Program Manager for the record. The CRA is required to submit an annual report of activities and financial statement for the previous fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 2024, to the state by March 31st of each year. A notice was published in the newspaper if anyone wants to review the report, and it will be mailed to all the taxing authorities after the report is reviewed and approved by the boards. The annual report was presented to the CRB on March 4th, and the board had no objections. At this time, I will give a brief overview of the 2024 annual report. This is the table of contents that outlines the sections within the report. This slide explains the purpose of the report and the Florida statute requirements to remain in compliance. It also includes our CRA mission statement. This section describes that the CRA was originally created in 1986, and it was reestablished, and the trust fund was created in 1998, which is the base tax year for calculating the tax increments. The CRA was expanded in 2002 to include the East Stewart neighborhood. In 2006, we included the public safety building on MLK, and then in 2015, 2016, we expanded the boundary to include an additional 486 acres of contiguous property. And then currently, the CRA boundary area, including water, is 923.87 acres. We also amended the CRA plan from time to time. It was last amended and adopted by the CRA board last year. The plan serves as a guide to implementing specific projects that are necessary for revitalization. This section describes the CRA boundary and the expansion of the CRA in 2002, and 2006, and 2015. It explains how the tax increment funding finance works and the increment tax in revenue from the base years to 2024 values. Here are listed some of the major accomplishments since the inception of the CRA. Just to name a few, we've had the acquisition of the trans system, streetscape improvements, green bike lanes, Triangle District and Federal Highway Tree Program master plans, and the acquisition of the Triangle property in 710 MLK Boulevard. This is the acknowledgement of the CRA board members and CRA meetings held in 2024. Acknowledgement of CRA board members and a brief description of their responsibilities and the CRB meetings held in 2024. This introduces our CRA staff and our backgrounds, as well as acknowledgement of the city manager, city attorney, and department heads who we worked closely with on those projects. This section highlights all the CRA projects, but more specifically accomplishments within fiscal year 2024. The CRA has a business improvement reimbursement program, which we refer to as BIRP, for exterior improvements to commercial properties. This is a matching grant program, so we'll reimburse 50% of the total project cost up to $10,000. In 2024, we funded 4 applications through the BIRP program with a total award amount of $37,000. The program encourages property owners to invest their own money for the improvements. The business owners invested approximately $44,000 of their own money for the projects funded in 2024. As of 2024, the program has awarded 55 businesses with a total private investment of $1.8 million, with an additional CRA contribution of $388,000. The city allocates $50,000 for this program annually. Last year, we created the Commercial Landscape Improvement Grant Program, also known as CLIP, to encourage commercial properties to upgrade landscaping and provide shade trees along the perimeter of the property and parking areas to improve walkability, appearance of the property, and bring them into compliance with Land Development Code. This is a matching grant program as well, so we'll reimburse 50% of the total project cost up to $5,000 for eligible landscape improvements. That includes irrigation systems as well. The CRA allocated $25,000 for this program in fiscal year 2025, and the applications will be processed based on a first-come, first-served basis. We rolled this program out in January 2025. We also have a mural matching grant program to encourage murals within the CRA. This is also a matching program where we reimburse 50% of the total project cost up to $3,000. We had 3 applications for a mural matching program in 2024. The mural was installed on McCarty Building along MLK Boulevard in East Stewart. The mural represents the community leaders who helped shape and improve the East Stewart community. This project has been completed. And the second mural will be installed at 11 Southeast Osceola Street in downtown, showing the old Colorado Inn, then and now. The third mural will be installed in downtown Publix on the building, featuring manatees, pelicans, turtles, and other sea life, and it's honoring the Environmental Studies Center, which has been serving the community since 1974. The Residential Facade Improvement Grant Program is an incentive program to make minor exterior improvements to residential properties. We pay 50% of the total project cost, up to $500, and an additional $500 for exterior paint can be requested. In 2024, we had 3 facade improvement applications and 6 paint-up program applications, totaling $4,500 in reimbursement. We also initiated the residential street tree program a few years ago to increase the tree canopy in the residential areas within the CRA. We did data analysis to identify residential areas of greatest need for tree planting and we phased and prioritized neighborhoods based on the existing tree count data. The property owner can request a free tree in the front yard from a list of recommended tree species, including shade trees, medium trees, and understory trees, which may have overhead utility lines that need to be accommodated. We coordinate with the contractor to plant the trees in springtime so we can take advantage of rainfall and maximize their chances of survival. Since the implementation of the program, we planted 27 trees. And the deadline to apply this fiscal year is April 30th and is open to all residential homes within the CRA. And to note, so far we have 9 applications.
How many?
Yep. 9.
Okay.
We are also pursuing designating the East Stewart neighborhood on the National Register of the Historic District. The National Register nomination application was submitted in fall 2024. The state is reviewing all the nomination documents and plan to hold community meetings, hopefully in May. Once designated, we would like to do a plaque, and the designation would give recognition to the community and acknowledge the importance of the area and its history. In the anticipation of the National Register designation, we launched a website to increase awareness of the rich history in East Stewart community, also known as Lincoln Park, and preserve the buildings and sites with historical significance through grants. Looking forward to 2025, we plan to be following the same designation process to register downtown Stewart in the National Register of Historic Places. The application is currently under review with the Florida Division of Historical Resources. We did want to mention, it was brought to our attention after the commission meeting on March 10th that certain properties within the Triangle District were not included in the proposed Historic Downtown District nomination. The reason is that most of those properties in the district have been demolished, and therefore it's causing a void in historic buildings in that area to have a contiguous boundary. Property owners who are interested in their building being deemed historic in that area would have the option to submit a separate application for their individual building to pursue the national nomination, or the city could choose to pursue another historic district nomination for the Triangle District, which would have to include the whole process of a survey and identifying the boundaries and another nomination application. Okay, we launched a new program called the Heirs Property Assistance Program to help clear titles to qualifying properties so property owners can take advantage of certain property benefits. If they have a clear title, they can apply for loans to improve their property, obtain grants, qualify for homestead exemptions, and get homeowners insurance. The program will provide legal assistance for up to $3,000 per property. So far, we've had an interest in a few property owners, but have received only one application so far. In May 2024, during the Historic Preservation Month, we celebrated dedication of a historic marker for the Women's Club of Stewart Clubhouse. The CRA will be contributing about $1 million in TIF for the construction of the outdoor amphitheater at Memorial Park. The improvements will include cover stage area, lawn seating, landscaping, lighting, and other park amenities. The total cost of the project is $2.7 million. Majority of the costs will be paid from the ARPA grant funding, and the Public Works Department is the lead on this project. The CRA provides funding for the operation of the tram system. The tram route was expanded to include the Wells Fargo building after the city acquired the property. The parking lot is converted to public parking after 5 p.m. and on weekends, creating additional parking for downtown visitors, which increased the tram ridership from that location in 2024. We have advertising panels on the top of the trams that generate $4,000 in revenue in 2024. And we rent the trams for private events, which generated about $1,500 in revenue in 2024. We will also wrapping the trams with bright colors and images to increase the visibility and promote ridership. There are 7 trams, and we should have them all wrapped by this summer. The construction for the downtown undergrounding and Seminole Streetscape is underway. Burkhart Construction was awarded the contract for $8.7 million for the construction in October 2024. We received $354,000 FDEP grant for the project, and it's a 2-year project. The project is expected to be completed in November 2027. The Riverside Park Neighborhood Improvement Project is also underway. It's located just north of the old bridge in a residential and mixed-use neighborhood. The total project cost is $2.5 million. We received a TAP grant in the amount of $1.5 million for this project, and the construction began in August 2024, but it will be completed in summer 2025. We also plan to make improvements to the mini park within the neighborhood. The improvements will include irrigation, shade trees, paved walkways, benches, decorative fencing, a new park signage to improve user experience, and the improvements to the park will begin in summer and be completed by this fall. We completed 30% design for the MLK Streetscape project. This project includes a 10-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street, on-street parking, crosswalks, mid-block plaza area, streetlights, traffic calming to address safety concerns at intersections, and landscaping. We are working towards completing 60% plans and will schedule a neighborhood meeting sometime in the next few months. The 60% design for the Guy Davis Community Park is also underway. In October 2024, the scope of work was amended to include the skate park design. The city's design consultant finalized an agreement with Spawn Ranch to design the skate park. We expect to get concepts from Spawn Ranch for review by the end of this month. The skate park component will be added to the 60% plans and submitted to the city for review by late spring. The plans will be presented to the board and cost estimates so the board can decide what items to stay or to be removed from the project based on the budget. The CRA has been working on the Gateway and District signage project since 2021. We went through multiple concepts and surveys for feedback from the community, and every time we did the survey, the wave-themed concept, which you see now installed, was the most preferred by all the responses. We completed the first phase by installing the downtown Gateway and District signs. The second phase with horizontal monument signs is in progress because those signs will be on Federal Highway and Canner Highway. So it does require FDOT permitting, which takes a little longer. We expect to go out for bid for the remaining monument signs this summer and install the signs by fall of this year. The Dixie Highway Streetscape Improvement Project is from Joan Jefferson to Colorado Avenue. We were approved for a TAP grant in the amount of $436,000 for the project. We held outreach meetings and presented the plans to the boards for feedback last year. The final plans and grant deliverables will be completed in 2025 and 2026, and construction is anticipated to begin in 2027. The board approved the wrapping of the utility boxes last year. The traffic control boxes are county operated and maintained, so we had to amend the maintenance agreement to include the maintenance of the wraps, so that process took some time. The wrap installation began this week, so make sure you're on the lookout. There are 12 boxes. And then also the CRA applied and received the CDBG housing rehab grant to rehab homes and preserve the affordable housing stock in the city. There are 11 property owners who received this assistance through the program. We completed 4 of the projects so far. 5 of the projects are expected to be completed this summer of this year. 1 project is waiting for environmental clearance, and 1 is waiting for direction from Florida Commerce, since there were some concerns. With the work to be completed by a contractor, we will be working with the property owner, city consultant, and Florida Commerce to resolve the issues. We received $6.2 million in CDBG COVID grant for acquisition, demolition, and new construction for a job training center at 710 Southeast MLK Boulevard in East Stewart neighborhood. We acquired the property for $1.6 million in January 2024. We have completed the design for the new facility, had public meetings, went through the permitting processes, and advertised for bid in December. We received a bid for $6.4 million. We have insufficient funds to award the contract, so we have requested an additional $4 million from Florida Commerce to complete the project. The state is reviewing our request, and we will hope to get additional funding to make this project a reality. We continue to partner with Stewart Main Street to promote downtown and support downtown businesses. Stewart Main Street was recently awarded a grant from the Division of Historical Resources to prepare a nomination application to designate downtown as a historic district on the National Register of Historic Places. They went through the RFP process and hired a consultant to help prepare the application. They expect to submit the application to the state for review this summer, and then, excuse me, and the designation will promote downtown, increase eligibility for state and federal grant programs, and most importantly, provide community pride. TIF revenue in the amount of $5.3 million was deposited in the CRA trust fund. Sorry.
Your water.
Uh-oh.
Your water. She has water.
Man down.
Would you like to? For fiscal year 2024, TIF revenue was used for activities like incentive programs.
You need to take a few moments.
Sounds bad.
You need to take a few
You want a
moments.
recess, Jordan?
Take five, take five.
She needs to take a few moments to let that settle. It's only gonna get worse.
Maybe she has what Commissioner Reed
Oh.
Don't say that.
I came from chief.
Oh, I don't think she needs the chief.
Chair, we
Shake
do
it
have
off.
a public comment. Chair,
Yeah.
Chair, we do have a public comment, so it is on
Well,
this
why don't we
item,
let-
but if you'd like to wait
Okay,
until
sure,
it's over.
let's go ahead and hear
or-
from Mr. Shear.
Right, but you have to go to the podium.
So I was just going to sort of echo or.
Please introduce yourself and
Oh,
your
thank you.
address, please.
I'm Clay Scherer. I represent the public today. 200 Southeast Four Winds Drive. I wanted to echo the comments of my peers on the redevelopment board and support them here in this CRA meeting. So I think our strategy will be looking at projects or considering projects after getting obviously community input as we reach out and we do that. But the thing is, we should proceed with the no-brainers. That's pretty simple. So the ones that are like streetscapes, improving pedestrian interaction, these kinds of things, I call them no-brainers. I might throw undergrounding in there as well. Those are more expensive, of course, but everybody would like the wires underground. So as we can do that, we can. The reason I bring that up is, some projects that are discussed or proposed are very big picture, very big vision type projects. And although there might not be total agreement with some of those, we shouldn't stop doing everything until we solve everything. So we proceed with the, I call it the no-brainers, while maybe we work on finding the right vision or the right agreement among folks for some of the much bigger, larger projects. I share that just to support my peers here today from the board, I think that's the direction of the CRB. Proceed with the easy things. We'll help and support and cook on those that are more complex, more difficult to tackle. That's my comment.
Thank you. Mike,
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Martell, in light of the recent difficulty with the CDBG grant, have we made any changes to that, or without mentioning any specific names?
So I actually was on a telephone conference with the Florida Commerce recently, and the issue as it relates to the homeowners thing has, one of the main company for them is doing a site plan and putting together what would be acceptable, but it would require both the city and the homeowner to agree on every single term of it, which means it'll come before the board for the board to review and approve. And then speaking of CDBG, there's also the Project Lift property, and that went out to bid, and there was also bid issues with that, but the Florida Commerce is reviewing the bid we received, and they brought it up during that phone call and said, by the way, just want to let you know we're still reviewing it. And so the funds that are in the CDBG grant cycle right now are allocated funds, so they haven't been pulled back by any federal government, and they're already essentially spent in last year's budget, so they're already out there. We'll probably know more over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully I'll be able to put the first issue that you raised on in April, maybe the last meeting in April to the first weekend of May, to address it.
So just to be clear, this commission will have to approve putting new doors in somebody's house?
If it goes, if it's $1 over the
Oh,
amount
okay.
that was allocated. The answer is yes, and it's likely going to be, based upon the homeowner's request.
Okay, thank you. Jordan, have you rallied?
Let's try again.
Okay.
Pull myself together. Okay, so TIF revenue in the amount of 5.3 million was deposited in the CRA trust fund for fiscal year 2024. TIF revenue was used for activities like incentive programs, tram operations, Riverside Park neighborhood improvements, Oleander Park improvements, gateway signs, wraps for trams and traffic control boxes, and other design services. And then we are required to include the financial statement of income and expenses for fiscal year 2024. The financial statement included in the report is currently unaudited, so it does not reflect the actual expenses for fiscal year 2024. The audited report will be published on the website within 45 days after the audit is complete. And the annual report, as mentioned, was presented to CRB on March 4th, and the board had no objection. So at this time, staff is seeking approval to send the 2024 annual report to the state and taxing authorities.
Jordan, that was 2.9 from the county in ad valorem? 296.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I see.
2.968. Okay, are there any questions of staff from the board members?
I just had a couple questions for Jordan. On the triangle property that you're talking about, does the properties that are excluded, does that include the church and the Thomas Building and the Old Town Grill? And does it include, are those included in the historic or not?
Not. So there's the historic survey that they are a part of that's already been established, but as far as being part of the historic designation that is being done, is in the process of being done for the historic downtown piece, we did not include the Triangle District historic buildings.
Okay, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But, because there's probably more historic properties right in that concentrated area than anywhere else.
And I thought that the
But-
church was already
So
in
this-
for
this-
historic.
The
Well-
city doesn't designate private property as historic because we don't have the property rights to designate that on behalf of private property. The city commission, last meeting or the meeting before, made application to designate the historic downtown area as historic. The Triangle area, West Ocean Boulevard, US 1, Joan Jefferson, are not part of the geographic area known as historic downtown Stewart, and that was always on the east side of the railroad tracks. So the designation of downtown district, not individual, there's no individual property.
Right.
Post Office Arcade's not part of it. Woodman Hall's not part of it. The Crary Building's not part of it. None of that are in it. It's the district as a historic downtown. The Triangle portion, West Ocean Boulevard, Baptist Church was not part of the historic downtown, whether it was designated in the CRA plan, whether it was designated in the city code, whether it's been designated in the comp plans, ever. If you look in our code, and it has the actual geographic borders of it. Another way of thinking about it is when you think of the parking exempt district, that's also known as the historic downtown area, and it's very close to that. In the future, if the board wanted, it could expand the downtown and expand certain criteria and things that are in that and apply for a larger historic designation. It doesn't come with it any of the tax credits that you may be thinking of. It just allows the city to apply for grants in that area, so you could do it. But like the private property owners that have a building that's more than 50 years old that may designate it as historic, for example, people with the CDBG grant had applied for, on their own, an historic designation and had their property designated as an historic church. That then came with restrictions. So when they applied for the CDBG grant funds and picked out the windows didn't meet the restrictions that they had. And so that's where you get into the things. You also get into colors and roofs, styles, all the stuff, and depending on what the historic designations are. So the city has never applied on behalf of a property owner to give them a historic designation. They must be the applicant because they are the owner.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about it, because I know that's very restrictive and, you know, and that kind of thing. I was just, because there are some historic properties there, it would be nice to get some of those recognized as part of the, but I guess it can't be, so that's okay.
Well, it could be, you had the two options. Each individual property owner could apply to be
Yeah.
on the historic, you know, have their own historic designation. Or the city, as Mike had mentioned, can apply for the Triangle District and go through the same processes we did for East Stewart and are doing for historic downtown and make the Triangle District historical as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor- oh,
Board Member Giobbe?
Yes, thank you. Question, I guess, for Mike. A little off of what we're talking about, but if some entity, whether it's the whole district of downtown or individual buildings that are historic, how is that affected by all of the implications with the Live Local Act? Would they be,
So that's one of the reasons that the city did apply for that designation. The Live Local Act, I believe there are some exemptions, but I know a couple years ago, the state preempted the municipalities from providing any architectural design requirements, and it was exempted from CRAs and historical neighborhoods. So if the state comes in and preempts something, having that historical designation gives us the ability to continue to enforce the architectural design requirements and things like that. I don't know if downtown is currently into the Live Local, but I'll look and I'll check with the city attorney. But it was, I remember at one point it did have certain preemptions, and that would be included.
okay, because as we all know, the legislative sessions that's now, I mean, they continue to tweak the Live Local Act and not in our favor.
So the current pending Live Local Act modifications that they have right now would expand the Live Local Act to any land uses that could be described as mixed use. Like, for example, our downtown land use is called downtown. It's not called mixed use. So they go through this whole litany to say that that counts as mixed use, so it would count. And then they also said that it's going to be expanded to PUDs. And then they also said that the density is going to apply to the highest density back to July 1st of 2023. But again, that hasn't passed. It's in committee, and so, you know, we'll have to wait and see what the
I think
legislation
the word
does.
tweaking is completely inadequate
Right.
for this new bill. It completely strips our ability
Oh, yeah.
to
I was
regulate,
trying to
and
be
they can
kind.
build anything,
Right.
anywhere, even on church
Without-
property,
But again.
administratively.
But again, you'll have to wait and see what ends up being the final thing. There's a lot of bills being submitted in Tallahassee
Right.
that are competing with each other for headlines, and everybody wants to, you know, bring it up a notch, but then when it gets to committee, sometimes it does get rained down a little bit.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Giobbe?
Yeah,
Board
I just-
Member Giobbe.
I just want to take this opportunity, because people do look at this meeting, even though there's not many people here. But I take this opportunity to ask everyone who lives in the city to please write to your representatives and ask them to certainly not vote for this bill, because it is detrimental to the city. And needless to say.
Board Member James, you have any questions?
No, I
Staff?
see his light is on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Clark.
Okay, thank you. I didn't reread the report today, but I just wanted you to go over a project that we've had before, and that's the US 1 corridor and doing the landscaping and so on. I know, like outside 215 South Federal Highway. When is that going to happen?
So we are in the process of talking to business owners along that corridor, the Federal Highway Tree Planting Program.
Uh-huh.
So we are, that's in the works, behind the scenes. We just haven't had
Enough
much-
people
yeah,
applying for it?
to make a patch happen yet.
Okay.
That's it? That's the update on that program?
That's all that's all I have right now.
How much has been expended?
Nothing.
Nothing, we haven't
Nothing.
awarded anything
Only
yet.
staff time.
I know that some people were waiting on it, and then, of course, the hotel property would have been on US 1, but then there's a lot of change of some property hands along US 1, so.
Exactly, some business closures along the
Yes,
way.
yes,
and-
yeah, I realize that, yeah.
Board Member Brickbill.
Just a couple things. One, does it make sense, this is maybe not a CRA issue necessarily, but since it came up, does it make sense for certain parts of the city to look for a historic designation that could then protect that neighborhood, similar to the way that, HOA rules do protect, the rights of what can be built? It's possible that we could look for a designation, a historic designation for, out on East Ocean and out towards Riverside and out that way, which would maybe protect the guidelines that we're putting in right now for development and growth in that area of the city. So,
Yeah.
That would come more through an ordinance, right? That's,
Yeah.
historic designation doesn't really do that.
well,
You could define neighborhoods and you could do the
yeah,
designation, but it would obviously, it would have to be commission act.
Right.
right, but if, yeah, it would be commission action, but that would maybe push a little bit of a shot into the side of the live local, so that they couldn't, if they exempt out historic neighborhoods and other things like that, maybe if we designated a certain portion of that a historic neighborhood, we could protect the zoning that we're trying to do down there, is all
That's
I,
what's happened with when we tried to push for the East Stewart
Yeah.
designation to get that there, to keep the neighborhood a certain way so that it matches.
So the other I had two other quick things. One's, I wanted to mention that, as you noticed, we've got the building in there for the Project Lift. But I would remind everybody that, we have to have blight, right? The definition of a CRA is that it's blight. But we forget sometimes that that's economic blight. And so if we're looking at pushing dollars, we can potentially push dollars into economic development, including going out and recruiting for that, doing some of the things that we might want to do to use that money and to get that in. But also, just we've talked about incubators. We used to have an incubator in town for businesses to get started. There's nothing to help business owners who are trying to get started. I don't care whether you're talking East Stewart or Stewart. There's no kind of incubator program left anymore, really, that is geared towards that type of activity. And so, I'd like to see if we could look at doing something in that regard, in terms of maybe steering maybe more of our dollars in the CRA towards economic development, including things like, incubator systems or things like that we could.
Absolutely.
So, and
Commissioner, Board
think that was it.
Member Quirk.
So,
Thank
first
you.
of all, thank you, Pinal, for the report. And
That's not Pinal.
She's an idiot.
I can pretend to be.
I had my speech already prepared, okay?
Oh, yeah, obviously memorized it.
You're fine.
Thank you, Jordan. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because that is, I totally forgot what I was going to say because you guys missed me. Mark, what were you talking about again?
The incubator system.
Okay, yes, incubator. So when we were working on the thing with IRSC, that was one of the issues to get that working together in that area. And of course, we have that with the Project Lift, whatever work they're doing, and the grant, and was listed as also incorporated incubator system. And people are asking, but that needs to still be fleshed out and worked on with Dr. Zakir and what is implemented. But definitely that's one of the areas that was talked about when we did that grant, and it's listed. So it's something that needs to happen because people are asking about that as a way to get new businesses. But in order to get new businesses, I think that Commissioner Collins was it Commissioner, no, maybe it wasn't Commissioner Collins, it was probably Mr. Breckville who talked about the vision. We have to stay with that vision of vibrancy and trying to assist with improvements, because then, I'm not saying that it will be big growth, but it will be just managed and will meet the needs of the people who want to do and grow something in the city, because you don't want to have 10 years from now or 20 years from now where instead of the city maintaining this vibrancy, you have more stores closing and more people moving away from the downtown area, and we're not relevant as an economic focus for the community. So I think it's important to keep planning and keep doing that. So I know that the CRA has guidelines and sunset time frame, but whatever we have with the CRA now, it's good that we've been taking advantage of those things and making the improvements that need to happen. And I look forward to hearing from the CRB in the future of some things that they want to do. And I don't know if we need to have some type of a summit or open house, maybe just an open house to let people know what the CRA does and how we do things, and maybe allow people to, hand in some comments or something, just a short open house, an hour and a half. It would be helpful, I think, just to get that message out.
Board Member Giobi.
First, I'd like to thank Board Member Breckville. I like everything that you said. I mean, I really do. I think it's great to, let's look at a different vision, how to use the money, and then free up money in the general fund. I like that idea. A lot of small projects to improve. And I really like the whole idea of historic, but I understand that would be a commission-driven situation. So, Mr. City Manager, sorry, would that be something that we could put on the agenda as to how do we address that? Where do we start in setting up the applications for those historic areas within the city that we would like to make historic?
It's obviously, we didn't budget anything for this year. It's not CRA budgeted. I don't think it's that expensive to have an agenda item at this time. But
Yeah, just
when
have a
you start
discussion at
doing the
least, yeah.
surveys and design and what the basis for the historic is, probably matters, but I'm happy to put it on a discussion item.
Or could we ask the CRB to give us specific recommendations? And
Well, their recommendations will be limited to those neighborhoods in the CRA, obviously.
Right.
So you
We're
guys
talking about other
decide
neighborhoods.
where you want to go, but yeah.
And to your first point about, while you're up there, to your first point about opportunity to offset general fund costs, is there some kind of audit you could do internally where you could see if there's opportunity to use?
You have to be very careful
Right.
because the CRA laws state that you can't use CRA funds to pay for already existing expenses. Like, for example, if we were maintaining Memorial Park, once the CRA came along, we can't just use CRA dollars to pay for every single lawnmower and everything in Memorial Park, because that was already an expense that was being operated by the general fund. The comment about the garbage truck, if you invested in garbage trucks, they can't leave the CRA, so those trucks couldn't be used to pick up garbage anywhere else in the city, or else they would violate the CRA plan.
Do you think
So
there's any opportunity there? Or
there, we do it all the time. Like, for example,
Right.
the Project Lift. Project Lift will be coming forward at some point to build this building. And there's $40,000 in fees related to Project Lift. But the CRA is going to pay the development department whatever those fees costs are, and those fees don't go into the CRA, they go into the general fund. Now, realistically, the city commission could have just said, we're going to waive the fees because we're the city and we're not going to do it. But legally, the CRA this is a CRA project, it's a grant involved, and so the CRA can use CRA funds to pay those expenses that are directly related to it to the city, and it effectively does transfer those costs. And when we get into some of the pond maintenance that has gone above and beyond what we've done in the past, we've use CRA funds for it. And when we get into enhancing some of the parks and doing some of the landscaping throughout the CRA and doing stuff like that, obviously, we always try to use CRA funds. But, you know, I can tell you that Jolie will be at the meeting tonight, so you can ask him too. But there's never a time that Jolie doesn't think to himself, can we transfer CRA funds to the general fund? And Pinnell sees us and runs from us because she's always afraid of it.
Well, do it now while she's in India.
That's right. Take care of it like it's gone.
You know, it's funny, a number of years ago, when the finances were tight, and we were concerned about downtown Stewart in terms of security and things like that, we actually added police to the downtown. Now, they were technically for the downtown, but if there's a call, you know, they don't have to stop at the CRA border, right? So it actually helped us cover some situation when we were kind of tight back in the day. And you have to be, you know, you have to be careful about it. You can't, but like I say, there's opportunities to shift legitimately. And even I would disagree with Mike from the standpoint of, yes, if we bought garbage trucks, they got to be used in the area. But if we've got one left over that we don't need anymore, we don't have to just sit it there. We could just transfer it out. Say, okay, we don't need this anymore. We've got our 2 here already, and these 2 that we were using before, we don't need anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure we should really be having this discussion.
I just think we
It's good to have in the public. I mean, we're having it in the
This
public.
is the only
at least.
opportunity we
I
get to
think
discuss it.
Our compliance with the restrictions of the CRA is of utmost importance, and I'm confident that the staff
Mike,
is capable.
do you mind mentioning what would happen if we violated that?
So there's lots
I don't know if
of things that
acknowledging
happen,
that's
but First of all, if you violated it and got audited, you'd obviously you'd lose all your, you'd go from a AAA bond rating to probably a C or a D, but on top of that, you'd lose the ability to collect TIF. It would come to a screeching halt, and the $5.3 million or whatever it is would go to zero. Plus, you'd have to pay back the money.
And it's the state, correct?
Well, it's the tax collector. The state regulates it. We have to file a annual report with the CRA, and it also gets annually audited as part of our audit. And, you know, I don't blame the county for this, but most counties don't want cities to have CRAs.
Right.
So if we were playing fast and loose, there'd probably be somebody paying attention to that to make sure that we could terminate that CRA so that they could get that money rather than us.
So
And-
they'd rather have that $3 million.
Right, agreed. And I would do the same. I'm not blaming them because I get it. I would feel the same way. But it's, and again, you know, there's the CRA plan that we've adopted sets forth the parameters of what the CRA can do. But in addition to that, I think it's Florida statute 163.3164 is what describes the CRA plans or Community Redevelopment Act and provides the parameters of what it is. And as
Okay.
Mark pointed out, it's the blighted, it has to be declared blighted, and you're like, you know, obviously the intention of the
Okay,
CRA
we
is
still
to
have
bring
more
it
to
back.
get through. Commissioner Clark, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Okay, with regard to this.
Board Member Clark.
This, trying to improve business ideas like Board Member Brettwill was saying, I just wanted to ask staff, both Mr. Mortel, the city manager, as well as the CRA staff, is there any major impact to the fact that we won't have that direct coordination with the Business Development Board because they didn't get a grant from us? And is that going to impact anything that we could have done in terms of trying to help with vibrancy of business or anything?
I would probably defer to Commissioner Giobbe.
Okay.
Yes. I've been assured, and they did it publicly, both here and at the meeting at the Business Development Board, that they will continue to certainly focus
Assist
on.
us.
Yeah, assist us to focus on the city. They're part of the county, we're part of the county, and they do for the whole county. So I think that we need to be diligent in moving forward to ask them and put those things on the agenda for them. And I will certainly be there to be able to guide them to make sure that they do. But I think that there's opportunities, and it was one of the things I did ask them to please ensure for the fact that, I know they're focused on bringing in large businesses, but to focus on the small business and also to help new businesses, which would be similar to your incubator, to set up a system where they could help new businesses to open. and help them and guide them. So I think that that would be important. But no, it's my understanding that really, I mean, we're part of the county donates money to them, and all will continue as it has.
Okay,
You could probably reach out to Troy and see how he feels. He's working with the BDB now.
Yes.
you have any additional questions, Board Member Collins?
So you don't need a motion
No,
from
hold
us
on,
to
I have some
approve?
questions.
Okay.
The Heirs Property Assistance Program,
Oh,
are
yes.
we, do you have an additional comment, Board Member
When you're
Giobbi?
finished, you know, it's not that important, but go ahead.
Okay. Do we feel we're being successful? Are we doing sufficient outreach? Did we hope we would get more than one, or?
Well, it's baby steps with this program, but yes, I do feel like we've had sufficient outreach thus far, and of course, it's ongoing. We did have the one, the attorney has reviewed it, and she actually got back to us, so they're in that process. I think that there's 33 total, and the majority of them in East Stewart, so we can.
33 who could benefit from the program.
You've sent them letters?
So it's
Yes,
easy to
because-
outreach 33 people.
Yep, we've
Okay.
sent them letters, we've done mailers, we've done word of mouth. So we just gotta, keep, squeaky wheel gets the grease, so.
Board Member James, are you familiar with this program?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I've received information on 31, I think it was,
31.
that were not clear. And we've been reaching out to them.
Oh,
and
good.
We're
Okay.
developing that. I did have a comment, though, before we
No,
move
go ahead.
on. So in the CRA boundaries, are there regulations that would prevent the we talked about blighted areas, from helping the home or property owners develop their properties? Let's say, if I owned the property, I wanted to build, but it cost me $500,000 to build this property. So the person that gets this property that I built would have to pay a mortgage of $2,500 at least. But within the CRA funds, are there funds available that would aid those persons in developing their properties?
So we don't currently have any programs for new development, or, I don't know if Mike wants to speak on this, but,
Last budget cycle and last year, the CRB and CRA boards discussed the idea of providing loans and/or grants to property owners as it related to this exact thing that you're discussing. It was decided that, first of all, the city couldn't possibly manage loans because we'd have to hire people to manage them, but more importantly than that, the city doesn't want to be foreclosing on its residents. And it really would create a horrible situation if you loaned somebody the money and they didn't pay and you had to foreclose on them, especially if you loaned somebody a second mortgage and they had a first mortgage of $300,000 and we loaned them $25,000, but we had to pay the $300 off to get the $25,000. And that's how a lot of banks failed in 2009, 10, 11, 12, because they had loaned more money than the value of the
Temporary
assets.
loans.
And the city would be in a difficult situation to do those valuations. But the CRA could in fact say, we're gonna dedicate $500,000 a year to give away or to
Seed money.
provide, for people but going through the CRB and the CRA, even the BURP program, which was mentioned by Jordan earlier, there was always been discussions of, is it a requirement that the person match the funding, or are we giving them the funding? And it's been historically, the city has wanted the property owner to have some skin in the game and to require them to pay the funding up front and then we pay them back later. So in the BURP program, you can get up to $10,000. But to get the $10,000, as the homeowner, you have to spend $20,000, because you have to spend the $20,000 up front, then the city reimburses you for 50%, which is $10,000 on the backside. If the CRA changed the program, it could be under the BURP program, and I heard last Thursday night the discussions where somebody said, well, what we should do is build a house for $500,000, and then the city pays off $400,000 of it, and then the person has the $100,000 mortgage. That sounds great. let's start with my house. But the problem with it is that how do you decide who's first and who qualifies, and what makes one person qualify over another for a program like that? And I think that's when you start getting into the details of that, it gets really complicated. But that's not to say that the CRA couldn't invest in a community or invest in that way, or adjust the BERP programs matching and things like that. That's simply a policy decision you need to make up and decide.
Thank you.
And what I was suggesting, Mike, was not that the city would make loans, but that we would act more like the SBA. We would guarantee, not make. So the banks would be responsible for determining
Same
who.
thing.
Same thing.
Well, it's not, because now you're putting the underwriting, the responsibility of the bank, which is what happens with an SBA loan.
It's sort of how we find ourselves with the CDBG grant.
No,
But if we guaranteed the loans,
Right.
I mean, honestly, you could do it. It's, again, I just know that the city does not want to foreclose on any resident. I mean, there's no scenario that we want to take someone's land from them.
The bank will.
Ever.
But the
I know
city
that
would get the
I know
blame.
that the
Yeah.
resident that loses their house
Would think it's-
is going to be blaming the city and say
Right.
we took it from them. And that's the, if you could get that perception out of it, it might be better, but that is a big deal.
Yeah, and I'll get off of it just real quick, but let me just say,
I'm just, Board Member James, are you done with your?
I did have one other comment.
Okay.
So I was trying to understand how the lift project was funded. So from what I understand, that came through the CRA.
CRA applied for a CDBG grant.
Okay,
It received grant funding to buy the land, and it also received grant funding to build a certain spec of a building.
I understand.
We then went out to bid on the building, and it came in at a higher number than there was grant funding. So as a result, we've reapplied to the CDBG and said, hey, here's the problem we have, here's the difference, can you give us additional funding? If they say no, it will come back to the CRA, and right now the building's 12,000 square feet. If we can still, and again, it depends how much costs have to be cut, but let's say it was 50% under. Well, if we could drop it to a 6,000 square foot building, we could still build the building, but could you do Project Lift in a 6,000 foot building? And it might be that you simply can't do the program because of the size of the building. And if that's the case, it'd be over. So it'll be, we'll have to reevaluate that once Florida Commerce has responded to us.
And my last question is, if there are environmental issues, does the city of Stewart foot that bill also?
And again, there's a distinction, but it's the CRA and not the city of
Thank you,
Stewart.
thank you.
But before we acquired the property, we did Phase 1 and Phase 2 testing to make sure that it would have an environmental clearance, just as you would as you were buying any property before you get title insurance. So in theory, if the city owns property that has pollution on it, the city is liable for the cleanup of that property. So if it went to sell the property and it didn't pass the Phase 2 test, it would not be able to sell the property and ultimately would be responsible for cleaning it up. So in acquiring property, we try not to do that as well. And in fact, when the city acquired the Triangle piece, it took the bank about 5 months to get a no further action letter on a small triangular piece on the very edge of that property that had come up in the Phase 2 testing for us as potentially an issue, but it was clarified. And we were able to do it.
And just my last comment, so the city, who went after the grants funding?
The CRA was the
CRA.
applicant.
Could they not also go after grant funding for property owners who
Well,
wanted to redevelop their properties?
We did.
so, yes, except for there is no grant that just gives you 500 grand. Like, we did the CDBG grants where people over a certain age, I think it was 55 years old, that met a certain income threshold, that owned their property, could qualify for up to $80,000 in improvements to their home, or I don't know if it was hurricane, or it had to be in reinforcing or cleaning up the house. And so they could give it new roofs, new windows, insulation, air conditioning, things like that, that also made it more efficient. And I think we did 11, or it was 11, we had 11 applicants that qualified, and we did the programs that just this year, or last year, for those.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Breckville, do you have additional comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to put into perspective a little bit what I was talking about, because this came up at the CRB meeting a while back. And I'm not proposing that the city get in the business of loaning money. That's not per se. But what I was getting at is, we've done some redevelopment, we've done some rezoning where we're encouraging a certain thing, like say single-family housing, okay? Let's just take that as an example. Well, if we want to have single-family housing in Fraser Creek over there, right, you can't get financing for it. Those properties, the way that it works out, because the designation over there is residential transitional, all right, you can't get a standard mortgage. The only way you could do it is treat it as a business property and go SBA, if you can even meet their requirements, or you don't get it funded. And so what I was talking about is that if we are going to encourage certain types of development, we need to look at how those people will be able to develop that property and make sure that there's an avenue for them to be able to do that. Because in Fraser Creek Edition right now, for example, if you go in there and you want to buy a piece of property and you wanted to live in it as your home, you're going to have to go in there and convince people it's a business.
Oh, but obviously,
So that's what I was getting at, and that's why I was talking about the funding. We wouldn't make the loans, we'd guarantee potentially to help in a situation where they can't get, where that particular type of property can't get financing because of the zoning that's there, or that the way that the banks are looking at the zoning that's there. And that's the problem. They look at as highest best use as commercial, so we're not going to do a residential loan. And it's an issue, so that's why I bring that
How
up.
would we secure the guarantee?
How would we secure the guarantee?
Like if we loaned, if somebody wanted to build a $500,000 house in an area that they couldn't get a loan because it was zoned wrong, and they
it's
came
not
to us
because-
and we said to SunTrust Bank, we'll guarantee it, so SunTrust gave them the 500, and then they went to Vegas.
Well, no, so that's not what happened. So what we would do, Mike, is we would hire someone to review the applications, see that they meet the requirements, make sure they meet the underwriting requirements. That's what the SBA does right now. They have these little CDDs, they're individual development departments around the state that oversee the SBA itself on the lending process. The bank actually makes the loan. For the bank to make the loan, they have to follow their own underwriting guidelines. So they can't make a loan. If they wouldn't have approved the loan themselves, they can't approve a loan just because it's got a guarantee from the city. The city, like with the SBA, would guarantee the first, would guarantee the second 90%. The bank would have to guarantee the first 10%, and then the city would be with the last 90%. And at that point, if you have to foreclose on the property. But it's the bank that's foreclosing on the property because they're not getting paid. They're the ones that are getting the revenue from the transaction, not the city. We're just a guarantor.
And
Just
so
trying
if
to move this along
If
here.
the property had gone down in value,
You could lose money. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could.
Board
So-
Member Collins?
so the city can't use tax dollars in any kind of risky investment.
Right.
And it can't be used tax dollars for investments. It's got to use them. So again, you're going to play flirting with CRA, and you're saying you're going to not have it be an investment, but you're doing a improvement, and you're playing some semantics with the things. But if we were actually charging an interest rate, the CRA requires it to be 12%, so it probably wouldn't be doing it. But the issue of the risk, the governments are supposed to be risk averse. They're not supposed to go into risky investments or anything close to that. And if you started placing tax dollars in jeopardy, you probably couldn't just lose money on the foreclosure. You would have to, on the front side of it, give that away, I would assume, unless you created some kind of SHIP program or some housing program that you had this, you have to live there 20 years, you're going to work it off and do all the criteria with it. And again, that's something for the CRB to continue talking about, and I understand the logic behind it. The other side to it is that our CRA, while $5 million seems like an enormous amount of money to us as we sit here, if you start spreading that out over $500,000 houses, you get to 10. I mean, it's not a lot. goes like that, and so it would be very difficult to limit who got it and who didn't and who qualified for how much.
Board Member Collins?
So I'll say what I said to you last time when we talked about is the philosophical objection of, is this really how the government should be functioning? Is this the highest and best use of government? Is this kind of a thing? Private companies do this because they can make profit off of it. There's no incentive for the government to be involved in this kind of risk. And I think a good, generally, right, like whatever I would do personally with my finances, right, would I take that kind of a risk? Would you? Would you finance and guarantee people? Probably not, right, personally. So I would hate to do that with other people's money.
If I had a mortgage, it's a different story. But again, what I'm getting at, Chris, is really what you're trying to do.
Board
I'm
Member
sorry.
Beckville, I'm going to ask,
Never
this
mind.
is why you have the CRB. You don't bring a vague concept here. This is what you hash out with the CRB. You understand what the city is legally able to do and legally prohibited from doing. And to then bring before us a more specific idea that's possible. Great concept, but flesh it out there. Let's not do it here. Okay? If that's okay.
That's fine. I'm just a member.
So I'd just like to finish my
disagree.
questions. Mike, Mr. Mortel. So it was created in 1998, the CRA, amended in 02, 10, 16, and 19. Our amendment window is getting shorter. Do you anticipate needing to amend it again? It's going to expire in 58.
So you have to do it's not a certificate of need, but I can't think of the term of art, but it requires an application. It has to go to the county. The county has to vet it. The county has to agree. When these expanses were done, it really times with the recession. And so it'd be fairly difficult to go right now and say, these houses over here that are selling for $700,000 each, this is our blighted community. So, when 50% of the houses in Stewart were in foreclosure, it was a little bit easier to address. So I don't believe that we'll be anywhere close to being able to expand the CRA to any additional land, just because the criteria to do so and the method that would have to go through the county for the objection and being able to say that it's blighted or that it's depressed, whatever it might be, absent financial crisis that I would rather not have, because then we'd have bigger problems
And
then.
Mr. Martel, do we need to vote on this?
To accept the plan, no, it's just a presentation.
Okay. Board Member Collins, do you have a question?
Mike,
A final question?
yes. Just along the lines of the CRA sunsetting, with the HB 991 and SB 1242 with regard to CRAs, have you looked at that?
So I haven't read this year's rendition, but every year you get a bill that's probably sponsored by a county in disguise that says the CRAs should either be canceled, sunsetted, can't expand, or restrictions, and they do move around. You got to keep an eye on them, as we do, and I know the one this year has the same language. The original project to start doing the enhancements to Guy Davis was generated from a CRA bill that said, if your CRA doesn't have any debt, then the CRAs are going to cancel and CRAs are going to go away. But if your CRA has outstanding debt, it can stay in existence until that debt is paid off. So every CRA in the state ran out to create some kind of debt vehicle so that their CRA could last until the sunset vision of that thing. Now, the truth of it is that the bill at the time didn't pass, didn't create the thing, and we didn't ever create any of the debt either. But the same bills that you're referring to this year have the same language in it, that it would sunset the CRA unless, of course, it had debt. So the question is, as a CRA, should we run out and borrow $20 million and create all this debt? And we haven't, and obviously the desire for the city is not to create debt. So we watch it, every year and wonder, is this going to be the year that we should have created the debt? But again, I go back to like our CRA. In the terms of the state, our CRA is extremely small. The valuations are very low. When you start looking at the Fort Lauderdales and Orlandos and Miamis that
West
have
Palm.
50 and 80 and $100 million CRAs and multiple CRAs, our $5 million is a rounding error. So every year, we anticipate that the big boys will do that fighting for us because they have a lot more to lose than we do.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, there's not much anticipation that this will succeed, so, from what I hear. Seeing no more questions, thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
So, item number 2, I will read that. Stewart Main Street letter of support for a mural on city-owned property. Resolution number 02-2025, CRA. A resolution of the Board of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Stewart, Florida, authorizing the city manager to sign a letter of support for Stewart Main Street proposed large-scale mural project on the city-owned property located at 221 Southwest Flagler Avenue, Stewart, Florida, providing an effective date and for other purposes. Jordan, are you going to explain this to us?
Sure. So the Stewart Main Street is requesting a letter of support for the proposed large-scale mural project on city-owned property located at 221 Southwest Flagler Avenue in Stewart. The proposed mural will beautify the public space and highlight the significance of the St. Lucie River ecosystems, which is inspiring residents and visitors to appreciate and protect the critical natural resource. The mural will reflect the city's unique spirit and identity. Stewart Main Street is applying for the grant to commission a mural and the artist for creation of the public art. And since the proposed artwork is located on city-owned property, the grant application requires a letter of support for the mural project.
Instead of giving you the address, the city-owned property that we're talking about is the bathroom in Flagler Park.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a map up on the screen if you didn't see that. But yeah, it's the bathroom located within, so initially they weren't going to go out for a grant, Stewart Main Street, and then they decided that they wanted to do something a little bit more large scale, similar to maybe what you might see at Memorial Park, and that's the reason for them going out to the grant.
It's the site of the Green Market.
Yes.
And is it all 3 walls or all 4 walls or just one
I
wall?
believe they're going to do all 4.
Wow.
Will that come
So-
back to us for approval?
Yeah.
It
The
will
actual
go
mural?
before the CRB.
And
And then if they do, which I anticipate, after they receive the grant and see how much they receive, they may even apply for our mural matching grant program, and that will also require them going before the CRB.
Mayor, I'd like to move resolution number 02-2025.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Collins and a second by Board Member Clark. Is there any public comment on this item? Are there any comments or questions by board members?
Yes.
Mr. Board Member
Sorry.
Breckbell.
I have, the only thing I would say is that hopefully, if it goes out to RFP, that there's a provision in there that favors local artists for credit on the mural. And that would be my only change to this, or was that would be included. The only other thing I would mention is I think it's great that we're putting it on a bathroom. I spend a lot of time in those, but at my age. But anyway, we could take a look at the annex building, and it's got a whole big wall that's got nothing on it. And I stood there and looked at that when I was trying to figure out where they were going to put this, and I'm looking at that annex building thinking, why the heck don't we do something with cleaning up? If we're going to do a mural, why don't we do something with cleaning up that annex building? But anyway, just my comment.
Have your board forward a proposal to the CRA, Mr. Breckbell.
So Candace was just texting me, and she said, you're looking at 3 walls. The one wall that can't be done is the one with the doors.
Right.
And that she would absolutely be looking at local artists.
Is there language that formally favors a local artist, Mr. Mortel?
We've never used anybody but local artists.
Right.
It's never even occurred to me.
Yeah. Any questions or comments by any other board members? If not, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Board Member James,
Yes.
Board Member Breckbill,
Yes.
Board Member Giobbi,
Yes.
Board Member Clark,
Yes.
Vice Chair Collins,
Yes.
Chair Rich.
Yes. And seeing no other items for our consideration, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
We will convene at 10 minutes for the